Webster, thank you very much. Now to discuss the ramifications of the vote, I want to bring in Nile Gardiner of the Heritage Foundation. Nile, I watched all the events on Saturday. I was fascinated by all of it, how it went down. Boris Johnson seemed defiant, and yet it feels like it might be slipping away from him.
Yes, Charles, I have to say the events of the last 2 days have been very unfortunate. Certainly, they've damaged the government's plans to withdraw from the European Union on October the 31st. I think there's still a chance that Britain can leave the EU. It all hinges, of course, on these series of votes today and throughout the course of the week. The key vote, of course, as Ashley Webster mentioned earlier, is the vote on the parliamentary timetable. The government has to win that vote in order for the whole of the Brexit legislation to be voted on during the course of this week. Certainly, I think the fate of Brexit happening on October 31st is on the precipice today. Certainly, the Prime Minister has done all he possibly can, I think, to move forward with Brexit at the end of this month. But Parliament has stood in the way. And let's not forget, a large majority of MPs are anti-Brexit. They are Remainers. They are people who have consistently tried to undermine the will of the British people. This is a battle really between the British people now and Parliament. Let's see who prevails. Fortunately, we do have a Prime Minister who is a very strong, powerful Brexiteer, Boris Johnson, a Churchillian figure. But Parliament so far has succeeded in winning all of the key votes up until now. So let's see what happens today. But I have to say that the government's position at the moment with regard to Brexit looks a little bit on the precarious side.
Real quick, Niall, if indeed it turns out that there's going to have to be a second vote on this, I've seen several public opinion polls. It feels like the majority of folks there aren't necessarily sure. I don't think even though there was a large protest on Saturday, that there's a large majority that want to reverse the prior vote. But there's got to be fatigue setting in. And just the idea that this could drag on, no matter what the outcome of the next vote, another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think the British people are absolutely fed up with attempts by Parliament to block Brexit. 17.4 million Britons voted for Britain to leave the EU in June 2016. That's a lot more than the 100,000 or so people who took to the streets against Brexit last Saturday. And also opinion polls show a clear majority of Britons want Parliament to move forward with Brexit. They've had enough of all the delay, the smoke and mirrors here, and they simply want Parliament to move forward and implement what the British people have voted for. And I think this is a real, this is a historic moment for Great Britain. In just a week's time, Britain could leave the European Union after several decades of membership. This would be a great moment in terms of British sovereignty, self-determination, freedom and liberty. A lot is at stake here at the moment.
A no-deal Brexit, whether it's October 31st or whatever the new deadline could be, because I'm losing track of all the different deadlines. But is that still possibly on the table?
Yeah, it's a possibility because the European Union could decide against an extension. The EU is likely, I think, to decide on some kind of extension. But there are some signals being sent by the French that France could potentially veto an extension. The French foreign minister today, in fact, just told French members of parliament that the French government is absolutely against any kind of extension. So it remains to be seen what happens here. After all, Emmanuel Macron has a very difficult relationship, actually, with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Macron could veto an extension. Right. After all, the French really are growing fed up, I think, with what's happening in London. The French want Britain outside of the EU. So the French could potentially force a no-deal Brexit, actually, which would be the best scenario if indeed Parliament decides to scupper the Brexit deal that has been negotiated between Boris Johnson's government and the European Union.
Well, now we'll know a whole lot more during this hour. Thank you always for chiming in on this. We lean on you heavily for this stuff. Thanks. Hey.